First of all, an enormous welcome to National Service Scotland's annual review. I'm Elizabeth Ireland, I chair the board, and this is my third annual review that we have done. It's a non-ministerial. Some of the annual reviews are with ministers, and basically we are held in public to give assurance to yourselves, whether you work in the organisation, whether you're in government, whether you're a member of the public, that we have delivered on what we said we would deliver on and how we've delivered it, and also kind of actually what our thoughts are around about the future. I'm going to do a bit around about the 15-16 year, around about the contract we held with the government, which is called our local delivery plan, and what we've achieved and some areas for development and improvement. And Colin, I'm going to hand over to Colin, who is our new Chief Executive, I'm delighted to welcome, who's really going to talk about some of the strategic thinking we've done and the opportunities for the future. Bit of background, you'll all be aware that the public services it's tough at the moment. It's tough to deliver them, it's tough financially, it's tough in health with a population that is getting older with more and more different conditions. I've just come from doing a locum in Rutherglen this morning, and primary care is just, it's a big churn of seeing people who are older with many, many more conditions. And it just reflects in how services are being used and just some thought around about the model of care that we will have to embrace in the future. Around the chairs table, we talk around about the complexity now within health. We have the health board structures, but you'll be aware that health and social care integration has gone live from this year, and so there's a lot of commissioning and a lot of development work going in with health and social care to see how best we can deliver services to people within their own communities and to prevent crises, to prevent admissions to hospital if that's appropriate, and to enable people to get home and feel supported. I'm going to pause there. We really do have a problem with the air conditioning. I do apologise. It's going to get quite warm. If you want to open the doors beside you, please do as the day goes on. From the board's perspective, I'm just really proud to chair the board. I'm really humbled by working with so many experts. And as you go on today, you'll get an idea of the various different services this board provides, not just to other health boards, but to patients, to staff. And to work with those experts and see them go above and beyond day in, day out is just something very special. And I've been around the board table for 10 years and I continue to see immense passion and commitment from everybody. So before I start, that's thank you to those of you that are in the room, for all those people that you work with, for the people on WebEx, and who I hope will going to ask questions as come by. But there is no doubt that from my perspective, this board could not achieve without the people that works within the board and the relationships you have with those that you work with and for. There's been a number of changes at board level. This time last year, Ian Crichton was sitting somewhere trying not to say anything. And I don't know if anybody clocked it in the last three annual reviews. There was a bet going on between him and Irene Bartleby that I wouldn't make him speak. And I think I got him to speak every time. So, however, this time, Colin is here and Colin is going to speak. And I'd just very much like to thank Professor Bain, our clinical director, who stood up as interim chief executive for the period between Ian going and Colin starting. In our board, we said goodbye to Jim King and Mary Robertson, two non-executives who've been with us for 8 years, and welcome Julie Burgess, who's here today, and John Deffinbow, who is not here today, but welcome. And just lastly, for those of you who've been around the board table in the years, Robert Wilson was our non-executive who left a couple of years ago. And I'd just like to pay tribute to Robert. He died a few weeks ago from motor neuron disease, but he was a huge instigator of much of the work that we're involved in at the moment, particularly around about shared services. And I wouldn't want this to go past without acknowledging the work that he's done. Whoa, do I have to put this on a table? So I'm going to focus on performance. We do this each year, as I say, we are held to account. And what I'd like to really talk about is actually some of the work that's actually gone on this year that was in the plan with the government. I mentioned health and social care integration, and I'd like to point out just one or two things. You've got a lot of them, I'm not going to go through it all. The local intelligence support team that Phil sitting here as director of PHI, we recognised that bringing together health and social care data was quite complicated, particularly within the IJB landscape. Lots of different data sets, lots of different information about often the same people. So what we've done with support and actually a kind of huge amount of I think, tribute to the people who are going out to work in IGBs, working in new landscapes together, linking data sets together, aiming to get as much intelligence for the IGBs around about what the community needs are and how to deliver services and commission services that based on those needs. It's been tremendously well welcomed by the IGBs, and we're in all but one of the IGBs at the moment. So a particular sense of pride that we're in the role. As I'm out to catch me. But again, I recognise that isn't easy work for some of the staff to do, but what a difference it's actually made. I mentioned home oxygen last year, and I just, again, if you think about when people are breathless at home, often on their own, to live need of oxygen and actually have a reliable source of oxygen that not only is in your home, but actually can be filled and the oxygen packs can be put on your back, that you can walk around and have a better quality of life. For me, that's something that is really special, and the patients I work with really value the reliability of that service. And the last thing on that one I'm particularly going to mentor is the Jack Copeland Centre. I think last year's slides were about the National Centre for Blood Manufacturing Modernisation. Jack Copeland was the first person that initiated blood donation. Is that right? That's a reasonable, thank you. So the National Centre for Blood Manufacturing and Modernisation is called the Jack Copeland Centre. I hope over time many of you will get the opportunity to visit this. This will come into commission at the beginning part of 2017. Colin and I went to visit the site in August. It is state-of-the-art, modern labs, facilities, and a real thought going into how to support people working in those environments. I'd particularly like to pay tribute to Safia Qureshi, who's been the programme director and has done a huge amount of work in getting the work from where it was as a concept 7 or 8 years ago into where it is now. David, you just pay GPs and opticians and everybody really well, so that's there all the time. So thank you. There are always areas for improvement, and I think there's a couple of things I'd like to say that we didn't, our aspiration for the Good Corporate Citizen Score, which is about sustainability, it's about zero waste, it's about ensuring that our services are as green as possible, if you like, whether it's around about fleet, transport, our buildings, and our personal behaviours as well. And by 2020, our aspiration that we'll be up to 85%, which is in the excellent. This has now got increasing focus within the board. We've got a board champion, Mark McDavid, one of our non-executives. And speaking to Marcus earlier on today, this is really gaining traction. And again, I'd like to thank all the staff who are really thoughtful about how they use energy and actually things that they can do themselves. I think the other thing to say is that we are very mindful within the board and the discussions we've had, and I don't think you can really work within the healthcare service without realising the huge inequalities that still exist within Scotland. I've been doing some locums in the East End of Glasgow where I don't often see people over the age of 70 coming into the surgery, and I do one 20 miles down the way at Lochwinnock where everybody's over 75, and it's just a stark acknowledgement to me of what inequalities actually means for people. With all the data and intelligence coming in through the statisticians and the work and the information that we collect, we set a target for FI, for all the publications that come out of FI, to have a kind of 50% of them should have something around about inequalities. It was a stretched target. 38% of them now do, and I think again it's that idea of actually where can we think strategically, what are the things we can do that might start bringing an impact and start actually kind of really trying to kind of address some of the huge agendas that there are within the health and well-being of our population. Health impacts. This is about blood collection, blood donation. A lot of this cannot take place without a huge dedication from the staff within SNBTS, the donor carers and the volunteers that work with the organisation to enable people to give blood, for that blood to be collected safely, processed and then delivered into people with real needs. It's been a fantastic service, and if you just look at any of the papers the Clinical Governance Committee around about blood safety and the regulation that this part of the organisation has to go through, it delivers time and time again. And I think the other wonderful thing around about SNBTS, and particularly blood donors, is the use of social media. I don't know if anybody is giving blood soon, but I've had a text call, a phone call and a letter actually, I think, saying that the collection is Thursday. Again, FI, your health intelligence publications are come on time. And I think just one thing, kind of, what does 2.5 million vaccine doses as part of our immunisation programme, what does that mean? Any of you got children? My children are now not children at all. They had a fairly standard few injections, one at 2, one at 3, one at 4 months, and then one at preschool, 2 injections and a polio. That has changed out of all recognition now. We immunise against many different infections, particularly protecting children. Rotavirus, for example, a common cause of admissions to hospital in the under 1s through sickness and diarrhoea. By vaccinating against that, if you see the graph, it has literally just plummeted the number of admissions for 1-year-olds. It's absolutely phenomenal, the impact that our experts have had in collecting data, in the infrastructure they have across Scotland in delivering changes to the immunisation programme, and then the impact it has in the well-being of children. You may think the first one is blindly obvious, but the two when someone registers with a general practitioner, the fact that you can register and within 24 hours now, you almost get the electronic record following that patient. That helps enormously in enabling people to settle into the practice, to have some assurance that their doctor and their team know something about them. And the agreed timescales are set, but that's huge. And David, that's been quite a change. In the days of paper, it used to be the paper notes had to go from practice A to U, and then for you out to practice B. That bit still happens, but the electronic bit happens automatically now. Norma's sitting there as Director of Central Legal Office, and again, huge kind of accolades to Norma and her team around about getting that level of customer satisfaction for a legal team. I don't think there'll be many that will get that. So again, thank you to all of the work that you've done, Norma, and for your team as well. And again, to Andy, 95% of all IT contracts delivered as planned. Fantastic work again, and actually, again, for somebody who delivers care, you can't do this without the work that you and your teams do. I was really interested about the flood risk assessment. I don't think I actually was cited on it, but I maybe haven't read my papers properly. So who's been involved in that one? John, are you involved in that one? Matthew? Martin?
It's health facilities.
It's health facilities. Yeah. Tell me about it.
It's recognising with changing climate and particularly increasing rainfall that there is an increasing flood risk and what impact that would have on NHS Scotland and our infrastructure and our ability to continue to deliver service. So critically important, and particularly when you unfortunately see the level of flooding in Carlisle last year and things becomes very relevant, and it's maybe hopefully a bit further out at the moment than it, but okay. Very Thank relevant you. Just now. I
think days like this are great because I learn lots as well. And the finances, I think, again, give assurance. We'll give you some numbers in the next slide just so assurances that we hit our financial targets. But there are some things we do on a huge scale for Scotland. So the procurement for goods under national contracts grew by 70% and to that amount. And then in an earlier slide, there was something around about the savings that were made both for increased number of people now using national contracts and the actual churn and the drive that we can do to save. And I think that's something that not only we should be doing more of within health, but we can start expanding across the public sector. And I think, again, I haven't mentioned counter-fraud, and there's been quite a lot of publicity over the last 2 years around about kind of fraud within the public sector, fraud within health, and counter-fraud services part of this organisation. Again, early detection, deterrent, some education, and of course the investigation that goes to try and reclaim some of the money that might have been lost. This is our financial position, and I think kind of the big, you've got the figures there, and particularly like to thank again all the staff, particularly the 5-year planning meetings that happen across the organisation that really drive down the financial plans, the workforce plans, as well as the service plan, and the work that Carolyn Lowe and her team do in bringing all this together. We're aware that across NHS Scotland things are really tight, and again today I'd like to give you assurance that we met all of our savings, and particularly our cash releasing efficiency savings. We were significantly over what was asked of us of the government. It is tight this year, but I think I can give assurance that we are in a better position than many health boards. But that for me then means, well, what else can we do to support other health boards and other parts of the public sector, given our financial well-being in comparison with many. And lastly, as I mentioned right at the very beginning, is about staff. I am Again, humbled by our staff. I am delighted of their ongoing engagement with things like the staff survey, iMatters, and the opportunity to continue to be a learning organisation. It is obviously important that any complaints that we have, we look at and we detail analysis around about it and do the learning, but also that we look at things that we think might go wrong and we learn from that in a standardised way that Health and Care Improvement Scotland ask us to do. But also what we've shifted again in board papers, also trying to capture the good stuff, the good comments and the positive feedbacks, so that the board papers now have that whole spectrum. And we have some fantastic stories and notes given to us by a myriad of different people about the work that we do, the work we have done, and the relationships we have. But I think as you go through that, and we've got Jackie and Ian Canty, who's employee director on the board, to have that sort of engagement in a staff survey, to have those a number of people feeling that they are involved in decisions, it's an area that we need to improve on, but also that it's that continuing improving and safe environment. I think I would be looking to all people in the organisation to feel that they've got an opportunity, if they've got ideas about how we might do things differently or better, they feel able to talk about it. And also if they feel that things aren't going as well, that it's in an environment where they are listened to and enabled to have that voice and be part of any joint decision making. We are asked by the government to report against the staff governance standard, which sounds it's a very bland, kind of unemotional tool. That's what it is. However, there is lots of work going on. And again, as I will reiterate from my last point, is that none of this is possible without the real engagement of all of our staff right across the organisation, wherever they might be working and in whichever field. So I'll stop there and hand over to Colin, and then we'll come back together and certainly answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I started in NSS 8 years ago as the logistics guy in Canderside when it was a kind of new and exciting project, and I have to say I'm absolutely delighted and really proud to 8 years later be chief exec of this organisation. I think NSS has a fantastic amount to offer the health service, but also the wider public sector in what Elizabeth has highlighted are difficult and challenging times. We have an organisation that has significant expertise across a wide range of areas. And I think the challenge for me as a chief executive is to set the climate that allows the people in this organisation to really be able to perform and deliver and support the organisation. I've been in the job 6 weeks, so I'm still in a bit of a honeymoon period, and I've had the opportunity to go around and talk to a lot of people. To a number of health board chief executives, which has been very helpful and informative to understand how they view NSS and what they like and what they think we could do better. But I've also been talking to staff about the priorities and the challenges that we face, and really just want to kind of summarise some of that this afternoon and just briefly talk you through the challenges we face, many of which will be familiar to you, but also some of the things that I think NSS can do about it. Apologies, I'm in the classic age where if I put my glasses on, I can read my notes. If I put my glasses on, then you're all a blur. So I'll go with the fact I can try and read my notes. So the context for this, I think everyone's very familiar with. It's about the 2020 vision. It's been set for a number of years now. It's been updated in 2016. And it really talks about switching the balance of care from an acute sector to community, and that's obviously driven by some of the key challenges that face us, not only in Scotland but across kind of modern developed Western European countries, the challenges that health faces. And the 2020 vision talks about the move into community setting, about more specialist care, but also, as you can see, around person-centred, high-quality, safe and effective care is the key to delivery. And I don't think there's anything in there that any of us would disagree with. The challenges we face at the moment, they're well trailed, but I don't think they're any less important that we keep these always at the forefront of our mind. We still have poor relative health. We've had a lot of success over the recent years, particularly in things like cancer, heart disease and stroke. Our average life expectancy in Scotland is much better than it was 30, 40 years ago. But in relative terms, when we compare ourselves to equivalent countries, we've only just kept the same trend. We've still, in some respects, got a kind of sick man reputation. We know about the inequalities that are about in the country, and as I've said a number of times to staff, and they've said to me, in a modern country of ours and relatively wealthy, although it seems difficult at the moment, we should be able to do something about that. We have an ageing population, and this is very personal to me. The reason I want the best possible care is in 20 years' time I am that ageing population, so it's absolutely imperative we get this right. We've complex care needs, as we know, as you've got an ageing population, significantly increasing demand and increasing expectation. We all, as citizens, expect the best quality of care, and rightly so, so that adds more pressure onto our health system. And we've got tight budgets, and that's always going to be the situation. It maybe feels tighter at the moment, but it's always going to be a challenge for us. So what's being done about this? There's a number of initiatives and things, again, that you'll be well aware of. And the reason for putting these up is more to demonstrate, I think, where NSS has a role to play in helping support the delivery of these. The National Clinical Strategy has been established, and that talks about very clearly about the switch from acute to community care. It talks about more specialism, it talks about technology, and it talks about data and understanding how you make decisions. And if you think of NSS, the things that we really can play into there are around technology, through our IT platforms and lots of other things that we're involved in. And probably a key theme that runs through everything that we need to do in the future is data and information, where through FI we clearly have got a significant capability, but we shouldn't forget we've got a significant data capability around procurement and logistics, around blood, particularly around the primary care sector, where David's team are paying £2.2 billion a year at 99.7% accuracy. but you know, that's a huge amount of knowledge and information that we've got there. Realistic medicine talks in similar themes around kind of more person-centred involvement in care, much more about shared decision-making, a lot about reducing waste and reducing unnecessary variation. And again, the theme of technology and data comes through. Health and social care integration has been with us for a while. As Elizabeth had, it started 4 or 5, 6 months ago, probably still in its infancy. And NSS is still doing a significant amount of work with IJBs and hopefully growing, and I'll talk a wee bit about that in the future. And then just in the middle and the bottom, we've got the review of public health, which is another key cornerstone of how we tackle the problems that we face. And clearly through Health Protection Scotland and the work that NS is doing, we have a significant role in the public health review and in terms of how we improve public health in the future. So an awful lot of things, challenges, but an awful lot of things going on to try and address those challenges. So from an NSS perspective, we are made up of a whole range of different services, and sometimes I think our customers and stakeholders find it difficult to manoeuvre their way through what we do. And do we really at times join ourselves up as well as we could? We did a bit of work through our EMT with some key customers from within health and outside around their perception of NSS. And one of the things they said to us was there was a lack of clarity about what you did and what you were about and what you were offering, and essentially what your narrative was. So we've spent quite a bit of time on this. And this hopefully is what we have come up with. And it hopefully means all our services, whatever part of the organisation and NSS people work for, if they take their service and fit it into that statement, does it make sense? And hopefully it does. Its focus is about both health, the health sector, and about well-being in terms of preventing ill health and making sure we can live longer and more healthy lives. The key for me is it's about provide solutions to support and deliver public services, and I'll expand a wee bit more on the solutions piece as I go through. So what's our key strategic intent? The board said this time last year we looked at a kind of revised strategy, and it focused around kind of 3 key things. Firstly, we should be ambitious in terms of growing the services that we currently deliver, not growing them for the sake of, but growing them because they can actively support NHS Scotland as its services it needs at the moment. So very much a kind of growth approach. We should be able to offer services potentially to the wider public sector, so we don't need to just be focused around health. and we should have an ambition to deliver a whole range of new services. And that's really what hopefully this slide is intended to capture in terms of our core activities. So on the left you've got support, which is really for us driving a continual improvement ethos that says what we do just now, we generally get very good feedback from our customers, but we always need to improve it. There will always be more demand, there will always be technology change, there will always be different things that customers and stakeholders want from us. So we have to have that continual approach and continual improvement approach. And we've got a number of things going on that recognise that, the productivity levels in Canderside, the efficiency of the blood processing, the very expert service that CLO deliver, which is commended everywhere you go. So we have that continual improvement ethos, and we need to keep that going. The second element for me is in the middle, is the accelerate, and I've used the term solutions when I'm talking to employees and staff and stakeholders. It's about finding things that help solve problems. We're generally commended very highly for delivering the services that we do. So our blood service is exceptional, our logistics service is very good. But when we come to join them up, that's when our stakeholders suggest we could be better. And in terms of a key focus for us, it's how we join up our capability in future to provide solutions that can help boards. And we've started doing a bit of work called tailored support at the moment to help 3 boards with specific issues that they've got, which involves joining all the departments of NSS together to provide a coordinated service. If I take example of prescribing, it's a big challenge for NHS Scotland. We, through national procurement, buy a lot of the drugs that we consume. The health practitioner services pay all the practitioners and pay all the pharmacists, and ISD holds a lot of the information. So there must be a past service package in there that we can help support prescribing in the future. We've also been involved for the last year on driving the NHS Scotland Shared Services programme, where I think there's been an increasing recognition that we can't afford to do things 22 times as we've tended to do. And I think we've made significant progress over that year, maybe not as much as maybe there was an expectation that we would do in the beginning, but I think we now have very strong governance structures in place. We are beginning to build propositions that NHS Scotland are wanting to buy into or wanting to use, and I think over the next year to 2 years we'll see significant traction in shared services, some of which NSS will be involved in and some of which we will just be facilitating through our programme management approach, but generally we're being successful. And the last area, the last remit we were given was to expand into the public sector and the wider public sector, and we've had some successes. We're probably just dipping our toe in the water at the moment, and I think it's an area that will expand and grow. I think there's a consciousness we have to have of the challenges in NHS Scotland at the moment, so we get the right balance between these two parts of our organisation. But if you take the list activity that was mentioned by Elizabeth earlier on, that's also become a very good example of whereby putting NSS staff on the ground, as it were, working with, in this case, integrated joint boards, we really are delivering a very successful package of services, much better than I think if we had the same number of people sat in an office in Glasgow or Edinburgh. So I think there's a real lesson for us there in getting our staff out working where people are delivering service on a day-to-day basis. So that's really the priorities, the 3 priorities and key focuses we've got at the moment. How that expands then into our kind of the things, that the guiding principles that operate for us, and I won't run through all of these, but if you take the left-hand side one of scale, clearly we bring a national perspective to debates and discussions. Health boards inevitably have their own perspective based on their local challenges and their local populations. What NSS can do, which is unique, is bring that national perspective. We can provide benchmarking, we can provide comparisons, we can take good practice, and that's something we have to build on and do much more probably proactively and maybe less reactively than we do currently. Reducing variation is a critical part. If you're going to be cost effective, if you're going to be safe, you can't be doing it in too many different ways. And some of the shared services we already provide, the blood transfusion service was established 50 or 60 years ago and is the classic shared service where we have reduced and taken out variation by doing it once, and nobody disputes at all that having a single blood transfusion service is not the right thing to do. So it really shows, and we forget that something like the blood transfusion service is a shared service. I wasn't going to mention resilience, other than the fact that everybody sitting in this room for half an hour in this heat is a sure sign of the resilience that's in NHS Scotland. The last area, though, is we still do a lot of work around standards and making sure that standards are common across the organisation, particularly in key areas like health-acquired infection and basics around cleaning standards, around catering standards. So we shouldn't underestimate what NSS offers there. The key services we deliver, the point I made earlier on about people concerned that it wasn't clear what we did, what we feel is if we focus it around these 12 core services, there will be a lot of subsets to these services, and there'll be lots of different pieces of work that people do underneath all of these. But hopefully they cover the core things, so that if somebody was looking at this and think, what can NSS do for me, they could look at this list and actually see they do facilities, so they will probably be able to help me, whether it's with my catering, with my capital expansions, whatever project it is. If I want information and intelligence, they will be able to help me and support me. So it hopefully makes it much easier for people who want to work with us, that they can see what we do. And then the real trick for us here is then to make sure that they are able to access our organisation easily and quickly and get to the right person very quickly. And then just really to close, why would you use, if you were a customer, why would we hope you would use NSS? And ultimately, the way that we will be able to continue to engage with our health board colleagues, the way we'll be able to continue to deliver to wider health service or wider health public sector organisations is around delivering service. You can have mandates, you can have letters that say you must, you can have structures that say that's who you use, but fundamentally what gets people working with us is the consistent delivery of service. And the key things we can do, we free up resources, we allow organisations to focus on what is important to them. And by doing that, we can save money, we can reduce their resource pressures, we can reduce their variations. We have seen the £36 million worth of savings that have been delivered this year. There's more we can continue to do, and that's one of our obviously our fundamental offerings. We pool specialist expertise. Every one of our SBUs and our corporate areas has significant expertise that can be delivered wherever it's needed, whenever it's needed, and they then give consistency of advice and support across the organisation. And I think health boards particularly recognise that pool of expertise that we have, and we need to make sure that it's proactive and that it's positive. I think the next one maybe is probably the most important, particularly when I talk to health board colleagues and chief execs around it. If NSS is going to take on additional work, additional shared services, what we have to realise is that reduces the risk and variation for the stakeholder, for the health board, for the council, for the IJB. And that does mean that potentially we get into, as NSS, to take a bit more risk. We have to take financial and service risk if we're prepared to take on a shared service. We can't take it on and then expect if a difficulty arises or if we need more money that we simply go back to the Commissioner and say we need more money. It doesn't operate that way. So we have to realise that we have to be very clever in how we do this. We have to be commercially astute in terms of what we do, and we have to really demonstrate that we will take risk, and we will take risk and variation away from our health boards. And the last one, the real advantage of using NSS, I hope, is the money stays within the public sector. The big difference we have over any other organisations who may do similar things to us is we're part of the public sector, we understand it, and the money that's generated stays within it. It goes back to patient care, or it goes back to social care, or it goes back to local authority. It's not that we're an organisation that's there for profit, and I think that's critically important. So that was really all I wanted to say this morning in terms of setting that direction. I'm continuing my roadshows and talking to staff, but really just to summarise, I think NSS has really got a significant role to play in supporting NHS Scotland and the wider public sector. we have got a significant skill base and expertise that we need to maximise. And as I say, I see my key role as trying to facilitate the organisation and its staff to be able to deliver to its maximum potential. So thank you, and I'll hand back to Elizabeth.
Thank you. What we thought we'd do was just put that as a holding slide and then offer questions for anybody in the audience, and then if there are any questions coming through from staff on the WebEx as well. So, any questions? From the government? Christine? from the government. Can I introduce Christine McLaughlin, who's Director of Finance of Health and Social Care Management Board and is our sponsor.
Thank you. And I was just calculating how many years I've been in and around NSS, and it's more than you. So I think formally, I guess, to say that everything you say about the organisation and you're proud of, I recognise too. I think NSS has come a long way in stepping up a gear every year, and I think the main thing now that's really exciting is seeing that two things you said, Colin. One about pooling the combined skills and knowledge of NSS and what you can bring, and also that having people out on the ground. I think it feels to me like that's, if ever there was a chance to demonstrate what NSS can do, that this is it. And I think your access to information and intelligence brings so much of that now together in a way that you've never been able to in the past, because we've not quite had the tools and the expertise. I think the work on integration has really shown that what that can deliver. So I think so it's mainly one of saying that NSS feels a high-performing organisation. If I represent government, then I think that's how it feels, that you operate and deliver really well. But I think now is your real test point of what you can do as an organisation. So I guess I'm keen to know how you feel that example, so tailored support as a bit of a kind of microcosm of what you can do. How's that feeling within NSS? How does it feel to staff working in that way of pooling resources and of being out on the ground? And how do you see that would influence the way in which you think about those circles as not just being how that feels to NSS, but how your stakeholders and the boards and wider public services feel about what you're doing?
Okay. Thank you, Christine, and thank you very much for your comments. Phil, do you want to pick up some of the understanding and learning from staff going out within the list teams? Thank you. That would be really useful to hear that. And then perhaps come to Jackie and Ian back, and actually what the impacts might be for staff and how we support staff if we're working out with the organisation as well. Phil? I think possibly a microphone.
The local intelligence support team, as I said to Elizabeth, we're now engaged with all of the health and social care partnerships, the last one having come on in the last couple of weeks. We're finding it really, really, really useful in terms of driving how we do our business to sort of better shape it. The way I've sort of characterised it in the past, that it's principally ISD, Information Services Division, that are doing it. And ISD of old was viewed as this organisation that used to work at the behest of the government. It used to be told, go away and collect some data on this, and we'd go away and we'd collect it and we'd polish it within an inch of its life if it had a life. And then we would give it to the government in form of a report, and then the government would go and beat the boards up over the report. And if ISD had a bad reputation, that's probably why it had a bad reputation. So by having people now on the ground working closer to the sort of front line of, obviously they're not on the front line, but they're closer to the front line of care delivery, they're able to see the impact that actually having that better intelligence can have. They're able to sort of network with each other. They're able to sort of look across the whole patch. So having sort of somebody working up in the Western Isles can link and share experience with somebody working, in an urban area, and they can build up that sort of, there's a network there that they're sharing, which in itself supports the integrated joint boards. We're able to leveraging some of the sort of national initiatives and get more value out of the national data. What I find in terms of, and we touched on, what does it mean for staff? Actually, the staff doing it, the energy in that group of staff. Now, to some extent, they're a little bit of a self-selecting bunch, because there were a few people who, mostly volunteers and some who were volunteered, but the energy in that group of staff is high. And I see it as a really positive thing for staff, and increasingly we're pushing it as something that is really a positive thing for staff, and staff are sort of saying, actually, that's the future. Staying here in the ivory tower, if you like, is not where the future is. Being out there is where the future is.
Thank you, Phil. Ian, have you got any feedback from staff and about how they feel about what some of the future opportunities and maybe challenges are?
Certainly from a staff perspective, we see this as being an absolute opportunity for staff from a development perspective. Phil talks about the ivory tower, so everything we did has very much been about NSS. So actually being able to go out and work with local authority colleagues, bring some of their experience, some of their skills, because we don't know everything. We don't do everything right. So learning some of the stuff that they do, bringing it back into NSS, expanding NSS's skill base is a very positive thing. The only thing we were mindful of at the start was staff sort of losing touch with NSS, and I think Phil and his team have worked really hard to make sure that these people don't feel isolated in their sort of host area. So I think that's a really good thing. And from a staff perspective, in terms of negative feedback, I've had nothing negative from this whole piece of work that ISD have done. So I think it's really positive and something that we could look to expand across other areas of the business.
Thank you very much indeed. Marion, you want to come in? And then maybe kind of, I know I'm afraid I've got a mole. Esther, you're sitting in the table. You've experienced some of this. I'd be very grateful if you're happy to share some of your thinking about it as well.
Yeah, so I was going to just say thank you to Christine as well, because it is really good to get the feedback. I think as an organisation, as Colin said, we do see ourselves as really ready to contribute more. And the idea of tailored support or more direct support to NHS Scotland is really, really welcome. So I think, in answer to your question, I think it's exciting. It's challenging as well, but a challenge that the organisation is very definitely up for. So this idea that we know we're here to support others, to deliver services to people, and so we absolutely want to be understanding what the challenges, the problems, the issues are for our customers. So being able to be much more engaged with them, whether it's through the list work, whether it's by bringing together a package of services, is absolutely consistent with what we want to do. So we don't underestimate the challenge of it, but it is, if we're going to make a difference for NHS Scotland, for the public sector, we need to understand where we need to be contributing, and we need to be doing that with our services, our current and our developing ones. So.
I think it's really interesting sitting around the board. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, we recognised if we had a greater understanding within NSS of what the potential was, this was the next logical step. So to see that now happening is just a testament again to how everybody and the senior team particularly have embraced the concept of change and what the different ask is. And the word solutions, I think, is really, really important. Esther, I'm going to, can I ask Esther, have you got a microphone?
Yeah.
You have.
Esther Robertson here as Chair of NHS 24. I've got a very specific question I'd like to ask at the end about blood transfusion, but we'll leave that just now. First of all, can I say what a helpful presentation that was? I've been in and around this organisation for the 18 months that I've been Chair at 24, and I've only now finally got the big picture, which is great. I'll also say I'll be taking your annual review away and plagiarising, so there you go. I would like to say, first of all, a huge thank you to all of your team, because as many of the people in the room will know, we're an organisation that has been through some trying times, and we're not quite out of the woods yet. But it's interesting to look at that and realise that in my year and a half, we've used 7 of those services. And we wouldn't be as close to where we nearly are if we didn't have that support. And that's from Norma, from Jackie, from your IT people. And we've been really, really grateful for that level of support. And there's no doubt it's much easier for somebody like me who's in a technology world that I don't understand to feel that if I'm getting advice from you, I'm getting it because it's the right advice, not because you're out to make as much money out of me as you can. Although I'm sure you've made quite a lot of money out of us anyway. But you're very welcome to that. A couple of comments about the wider, though. I do think, given, and Elizabeth smiled when we talked about shared services, I think there is a concern out there sometimes that what shared services means is NSS swallowing everything up. So I do think you've got a job to do to get that message across, that sometimes your role in shared services is just to facilitate bringing other people together. I think there are times when it's quite right and proper that you should be part of that and not just facilitating. But I think the other things that have struck me, I'm involved in another organisation in the public sector very small, relatively speaking, about the size of 24, and they're really struggling in procurement. And I said to them, why not come to NSS? Now, you use the word shared service, and they don't see that, because if they're sharing a service with this behemoth that is the health service, they believe they'll be bottom of the queue. But actually I said, well, but that's not. What they'd be doing is selling you a consultancy service, and that would be on a contractual basis, which I think is very different. So I do think selling to local government is perhaps easier, but to some of these these national smaller bodies, there's quite a challenge to get over that hesitancy that you're very much a health service body and they would just be a bolt-on. On a more positive note, you said something which hadn't occurred to me. In my earlier engagement in the health service 15 years ago in Fife, there was much talk of hit squads, which lots of people will know. But what you've described is a model I've seen in further education, which is much, much better, which is before you get to the need of a hit squad, you go somewhere where you can get a multidisciplinary team to come in and help you solve the problem before it gets out of hand. And I wonder how many people around the 22 health boards realise that it's not just those 12 individual services, but that you actually can put that multidisciplinary team together and go in and provide that, which I think would be great. So, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think kind of going back to the shared service, I mean, I chair the shared service portfolio board, and one of the things particularly in the health area, by bringing subject matter expertise in from other parts of the organisation, our role, I hope, is seen very much as facilitation, bring different groups together, looking at resilience of radiology, for example, where radiology services across the territorial health boards is vulnerable and very vulnerable in some areas, and how the work we're doing can actually kind of take out the risk, make sure the service is sustainable, but actually do it on a once for Scotland and a best for Scotland. I think that's the best for Scotland. You're going to ask a blood transfusion question?
Yeah, very small question, but it's something that's taken me by surprise. I'm somebody that's been giving blood since I was 20, and sadly now they won't take my blood anymore for reasons I won't bore you with. But I was absolutely staggered to see 127,000. I had always imagined a much bigger proportion of the population gave blood than that. So yeah, I was curious to know how that's changing over time, and is it getting better or worse? Or
Mary, do you want to respond to that particular one?
Thank you. So our population of blood donors does decline because people end their blood donation career, as you rightly say, for a whole variety of reasons. But we have extended the age limit, so people are donors. They can go on donating for longer if they are fit, well and healthy. And we have also doing a lot of work to encourage new and younger donors to join us for a career. The new and younger donors tend to come and maybe give once or twice, and then their lifestyle is such that they're then deferred for whatever reason. And the other thing is that the world is actually a much, much smaller place, and the geographical deferrals are becoming greater. So we have issues arising like Zika virus, we have malarial areas, we have all of these kind of things that are on the fold. So it is relatively stable. I'm not sure if you have seen our very, very successful international campaign around the missing type that many people engaged in, and that had a phenomenal impact. I mean, the social media stats are colossal in relation to that. And our new registrations of donors have been absolutely massive as well. So, very successful campaign that we participated in with NHSBT. Scotland was particularly successful with that, and we thank everybody for contributing. And we'll look at what the impact has been across the world.
Thank you very much. Colin, did you want to come in? Was there one thing you...
It was only just to recognise Esther's point about shared services and being very conscious of working with health boards around that and trying to kind of, almost from my point of view, kill some of the myths that were around NSS's role in this. And I've had some very good engagement with chief executives around that, and hopefully just over time we will be able to deal with that. But I'm very conscious it's an issue for us.
Thank you. No questions. Hello.
I'm Eddie Turnbull from Scottish Government and Head of Health.
Hi, Eddie.
Just hoping
I've heard your name lots.
Yeah, hoping that the relative position and size of information technology...
This is EMT. They do lots of work with colours. I'm sure that feeds in as well. What? Crayons.
Was interested, again, you've spoken about being more ambitious. You've spoken about growth. Again, it's been raised, that you're ready to do more, but that implies creating some headroom in some way. What have you left behind, or what do you intend to leave behind in terms of your current portfolio? Or is it all about looking for efficiency in terms of how you do it, improvement, or in fact, is there a recharge element coming into this? Just interested in how you plan to take this forward.
I think if I do it from a generic board perspective and then hand over to Colin, which can give you the more difficult answers with the specifics. So in a board perspective, what we do, we go off-site every year. We look at the services that we provide at the moment. We look at where the advances may be or where the efficiencies may be. We make planning around about whether we're going to invest or disinvest proportionately. And then we do the planning within the organisation to say this is an area where we feel will grow. What is your headspace? Have we got the right capacity and capability in place? What do we need to do in terms of recruitment around about that, and skill development, leadership development, and in other areas where through advances in technology, and perhaps blood's an area where actually the blood modernisation will actually enable us to do more and better with less financial resource, is an area we can look differently. So we're very mindful of our financial envelope and actually what we have within the organisation. But I think we are in a position where I would argue that many territorial boards are not, where we do have that thinking space and that headroom to think about what we might do differently, to look not just in year but 5-10 years out. And that's something that I'm very keen for the board to keep that focus on. Of course we have to, as a board, get assurance about delivery and hold executives to account. But I think for this organisation particularly, we have an opportunity to think strategically, being aware of the myriad of different policy documents that are there, and particularly what we can do.
I was just going to say I agree. I think that's a prime role for yourselves in this, and particularly around the technology.
But we are.
area.
You see that our core LDP agreement, although there are stretch targets in there, we are achieving. So it is that we are financially sound. We've got a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility to do more. Colin.
Yeah, I mean, I think it splits down into a number of areas. I think that the whole drive around continual improvement and efficiency in these core areas potentially allows us to provide more service for the funding that we get, so we don't have to say to our board in a procurement project we need more money from you, because possibly we can do it from within the core. The other thing I'm very conscious of, given the current financial climate, is NSS trying to keep control of what we can do. So if we want some money for a project, rather than having to go and charge somebody for it or go and ask Scottish Government for it, can we find it within our own funding envelope? And inevitably what that leads us to is continually to try and be more efficient and find ways of freeing up our own resource, but also potentially talking to stakeholders about things we stop doing. And it's sometimes a challenge for us that we find things that are not done very often and maybe not well used, but when we go to get them, ask for them to be stopped, we get somebody says, oh no, I need that. And maybe that's going to be a more challenging question as we go forward, because we'd like to control development from within our own funding if we can. And I think the other areas then is on either a project basis we can seek funding from whichever stakeholders are involved and seek funding perhaps externally. I think the other key for us is there will be many areas where we can provide service where a stakeholder or a customer would be paying for it because they would be buying it from somebody. So there's still the opportunity for them to fund it from us. The key, I think, two things. One is we're a not-for-profit organisation, so all we ever ask for is cost recovery. And the other key thing is that we demonstrate real value and real return on investment, so that if boards have got money that they want to invest in a certain area, they're happy to invest it with us because they know they will get a return, they'll know they'll get service, they'll know they get someone who understands them. And we're doing it for cost, if you like. So I suppose it's those kind of three key areas, Eddie, that we want to work on.
I'm just going to bring Andy sitting next to you. Is there anything particularly in the IT space that you wish to answer into, Andy?
I think we've done that over the years within the IT portfolio. There's been areas where we've spent less. Certainly, reaching back a bit, we used to build our own systems now, and we used to build our own internal applications, including GPs and others. And that's one of the areas we're disinvesting in terms of IT. But we're investing in other places like business intelligence to support the kind of things Phil's team's doing. And other areas such as integration now that we buy most of our applications on the outside marketplace in terms of how those hold together. We're doing more on the consulting front. We're doing more in terms of the Scottish Wide Area Network reaching into other parts of the public sector. So these things are always on the move. That there are areas that get less emphasis and other areas that get more over time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anything coming through from yourself?
Yeah, I think firstly I'd like to put an apology to staff. I think we've had some technical issues whereby there's a screen that pops up when you log into the website, and it's asking for details, and while we're able to see what details are being asked, a lot of the staff aren't, so they're not able to actually log in. So unfortunately we've missed a bit of a trick there, but fortunately we are recording this, so we will be putting out a link for the staff to view it afterwards. But I still have managed to get a few questions through for the lucky ones who've managed to get on. And the first one, I've got 3 here. The first one that I have is, where does Colin see the major growth areas within NSS as being?
I think the obvious one has been a consistent theme throughout this afternoon is in Phil's area. He's shrinking into the seat there.
Well, I just want to make sure that's recorded.
I think with the increasing challenge on resource, the increasing complexity, all of the issues that we're trying to address, having up-to-date, high-quality information that can be used to help decision-making is really the thing that's probably if I was to pick one bit of NSS, that would probably be the key one that would really support going forward, whether that's in things like LIST or whether it's generally in how we're supporting health through things like Discovery and Spire. So as if I was to pick a single piece of work, it's really that provision of high quality information that can be accessed by stakeholders, that we can provide, but more that we can turn into intelligence that allows good decision making.
I think the other thing I'd say is that the idea of actually pulling multi-professional teams together from across the organisation to work with other partners. I think I see that as something really exciting for all staff to have to share their expertise in a different way and to work differently with customers.
And that segues quite nicely into the second question, which was about what are we doing as NSS to try and encourage that sort of culture to foster within NSS, because I think it's been noticed that people work very well in their own areas, but this joining up process, and it's certainly something that's come up at the roadshows, people are keen to understand and learn more about what each other does in the different areas. So what work are we doing to encourage that?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll say from a board area, I think for me, it's something that I would like to see bottom up as well as from ourselves right the way down. So, what are the opportunities of working differently within your environment? If you're in a particular area like Aberdeen, there's probably little opportunity apart from working within PSD to work with colleagues in that part geographically. But what about what you're doing today with web access? What about actually different ways that we can think about working together? What about actually just events like this, actually just having almost like a roadshow or an open house for staff to come and actually think about how they might like to work differently as well. There are lots of different programmes. I think I hope staff feel that they're enabled, if they wish to, and supported to go through leadership work as well, where they will bring people together across the organisation in leadership programmes. But I think it is fundamental. I go back to 10 years when I came to the board, it was so siloed. I think we have done a lot, but it's really interesting that the staff say that we could do more. And I think, for me, I really would like to listen to that and understand how they think they could do differently as well, and would really encourage and support them to do that. Colin, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just think actually it's a journey, and since we did Quest 2 or 3 years ago now, when we reduced the number of operating units we had down to 6, and the kind of ethos of the organisation was about trying to join us up. So I think if you were to track us on a graph, we're moving in the right direction. We've still got a lot more to do. I think we've done an awful lot through communication and things like senior management forums, and just trying to build that culture where actually we are actively encouraging join up and cooperation and common approach to problems. I think the next stage is actually setting ourselves common targets that are not necessarily an IT target or a blood transfusion target or a logistics target, for example. We've actually, as senior members of the management team, and as we go further down, you've got targets that are actually about providing solutions, and we're tasked on things where working collaboratively is essential, or else we will not deliver. And that's, I think, the kind of thing taking it to the next stage. But it's really just about reinforcing that the culture and I think the requirement of our stakeholders to see us join up, is the best thing to drive us to do that.
It's a really good question, and I think it's part for all of us to think about how that might happen even more than it is at the moment.
Okay. And my final question was about the circles. Somebody's asked, what do the circles mean? And it's quite interesting because it's part of our new branding. And I know we've got Matthew Nielsen in the audience, who's the Customer Engagement and Development Director, whose team has been working on this quite hard over the last few months. So I don't know whether you want to answer that, Elizabeth, or pass it to Matthew?
Absolutely not. Matthew.
Hello there. The circles are simply one of the easiest devices for staff to use and in presentations and other things, and it just allows them to, enables us to free up the brand so that they can use it in any way they see fit, and the circles is just simply a device for doing that. There's also a lot of connectivity, and the idea being is that you can start to pull out, include different parts of the services and pull them together in different ways, and it was just decided that the circle was the easiest way to do that because it's such a simple device and everyone can create a circle and put a word in it. And that really was essentially what it was all about, and that's because we want to create an approach that anyone can use and doesn't require lots of people in the centre managing it. We want to free up and make sure that it can be used by the staff.
Thank you. So the key things for me, which perhaps sum up today, is around about solutions and connectivity. And if circles may be a way to do it, then let's do it that way. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other questions before you all expire and need to get resuscitated? Hello.
My name is Tina Chapman. I am a member of the public, and I thank you for the invitation. I just wanted to remind everybody why you really are here. It's for me. I have an NHS background, so I have experienced National Services Scotland in various guises over years, and I just wanted to say that this sounds as if you've taken the organisation by the scruff of the neck and moved it forward, and I found it a very positive experience hearing how you're moving through various aspects. And one thing that's very close to my heart at the moment is the integration of health and social care. So I'm really pleased that we had lots of comments about working towards and improving that. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think certainly for when I work in communities, to access services that feel joined up, where actually for people who access, whether it be anything from district nurses to home helps to a commode, it actually doesn't matter where it comes from. It needs to happen quickly, and it also needs to go away again quickly if you don't need it anymore. And I think if we don't do anything but remember that actually what can we do to join that up, whether it be through IT, through it be staff, through it be through intelligence, between service development. So I think if you don't mind, I'm going to end on what's been a really powerful comment. And thank you very much indeed. And thank you to everybody, but particularly to Caroline McDermott, who has done a huge amount of work in putting this on today and supported myself and Colin in getting the slides together, as well as Matthew's team and Lynn and her team as well. So thank you very much indeed. Please enjoy.